Bună ziua! Bine ați venit în Elveția! Sper că ați avut o vizită plăcută până acum și că Andrei v-a arătat toate lucrurile fenomenale care se fac la EPFL pentru inovație. Prezentarea o să o fac pe englezește, vreau numai să profit să vorbesc și odată românește cu sală plină de lume, că de obicei e pe englezește. So I switch to English now. So I work, my name is Raluca Flukiger. I work for the Technology Transfer Office of the University of Geneva. I'm a licensing officer. I've been there for 12 years now, a bit over 12 years, and I have no intention to leave. Yeah, what? It's not on? I have it.
Sorry.
So I will try to present how we work at University of Geneva, and we'll try to highlight differences, if I'm aware of that I know, between how we work and how the EPFL works, because I think you've been immersed in EPFL these days. So I'll try to concentrate on topics related to the universities. At University of Geneva, we have it's a fairly small university. We have 15,000 students. 2,500 researchers, 600 professors, so it's a decent size. We have a decent annual budget. We have over 300 million Swiss francs just for research. Tons of publications, so the impact factors are good. It's a high quality research institution. We have lots of national centers of excellence in research, so the quality of the research is fairly high at University of Geneva. Now, with respect to technology transfer, our rectorate doesn't give us a very strong message that we have to innovate. It is mostly bottom-up, which means that if the professors want to innovate, they are free to do so, but they have no punishment if they don't, and they have little recognition if they do. It's entirely up to them whether they want to do it or not. We have our office is funded decently, so we have enough people to work with the researchers to engage in technology transfer, so it's their choice if they want to come to us or not. We have the general mission of all the technology transfer offices is to promote and facilitate the transfer of university technology for society's use and benefit. That sounds very nice, doesn't mean very much. So basically, our main goal is to promote innovation so that our technologies end up being used for the public. Our goal is not to make money. It's to get the technologies to the people. Our office was founded in 1999, so it's already about 15 years ago. It was started with one person and then grew organically, then 2, then 3, then 4, and now we are for quite a lot of people. We're about 6 or 7 people in the office. It is a part of the rectorate of the University of Geneva, so it's an internal service. That's slightly different in other places where they have created companies to do technology transfer. So we are a service of the rectorate, and we have a mandate for the hospitals. That's HUG. Hospitals are Hôpitaux Universitaires de Genève. The HUG are the hospitals in Geneva. So we also have a mandate to engage in technology transfer for the clinicians. This is very important for us because all the doctors in Geneva who work at the hospitals are also, most of them are also professors at the university. So therefore they have the 2 hats, and it's important that we are able to serve them on both sides, both the clinical side and the medical school at the university. Since 2005, we have also started to work with the universities of applied research. Les HES, c'est comment? Applied science, exactly. So these are much more practical, and most of our products that are already on the market come actually from them, because they invent vegetalized walls, devices to water their plants. So there's a strong agricultural, horticultural antenna there, and they tend to provide all sorts of very tangible, almost ready for market inventions. So these are very easy to license. So we're quite happy to have them. So it's nice to have the whole palette. We have now medical inventions, we have these very practical inventions that are almost ready, and we have the very early stage technologies from the universities. And it's a nice, they're nicely complementary, and it gives us nice opportunities to put them together and help them collaborate between each other to push technology further. However, it creates some difficulties because the institutions are all different. Their internal rules are different, and that forces us to know all the rules of all the institutions. And when you have a professor who is both hospital and university, it's a bit of a schizophrenic state, because at the hospital he has to behave in a certain way, and at university it's a slightly different way. So we have to just make sure that he's always aware that when he does things in a certain environment, there are some differences. For example, the contracts are signed differently in the different institutions, etc. Our office, so please interrupt me, and if you have any questions, I think Adam will forgive you if you ask them in Romanian, if you prefer. I understand, but I will answer in English. Our office is made of quite a lot of people, so fewer than EPFL though. So this is our boss, Laurent Mieville. These are the 4 licensing officers. Chantal is responsible for communication and contracts mainly, and we have 1 secretary and 1 accountant. And we tend to have 1 or 2 trainees at any time. So Adam was with us a long, long time ago. Not so long actually, before he started here. And we like to take trainees and to help, we show them how we work, and they help us in exchange with some contracts or with evaluations or marketing. So it's a win-win situation, we feel, and we will continue having trainees. Some of the trainees are actually much more experienced than we are. They're just between jobs and are willing to give us a hand, so we take them in quite gladly. Our Vice Rector for Innovation signs all the contracts. Unfortunately, he is not only the Vice Rector for Innovation, he also has to deal with the buildings and human resources and finances, so he's quite busy. So innovation is not very high on his agenda. He's very supportive, we're very lucky with him. He supports all our projects, most of our projects, especially if they don't cost anything. And he will sign our agreements quite readily without much questioning. The services we provide is mainly 2. Our main goals are to license technology. So our office started out as a licensing office, and contracts came on top a bit later. So the first part is pure licensing technology. The professors bring the technology and we license it to industry. The second part is negotiating contracts. So we deal with all the MTAs, material transfer agreements, confidentiality agreements, collaboration agreements. We do not do European contracts because we find that it's very hard to negotiate them, so it's a bit pointless. So we have, there's an office, it's called Research, and they deal with the European contracts. And we used to help them by reviewing the intellectual property clauses, but even that has proven very uninteresting for us in a way, because we can't really influence much, and it's just basically hindering the process. So we've left the Research office get on with them. We don't do collaboration agreements with other academic institutions. But other than that, we do pretty much everything. And we don't do grants. There is no grants office at University of Geneva, so people always have a bit of the difficulty to know where to go to get their grants reviewed if they need to. So we have a bit of an issue now with MTAs, because we also feel that we do academic MTAs, material transfer agreements, and these are a little bit cumbersome. We're drowning in them. There are very, very many, and there is very little impact from signing them. So we're currently thinking hard about how to manage them so that they don't take up all our time, because at Unitec, the licensing officers also manage contracts and they have to deal with the MTAs. So most of your day is spent doing MTAs and collaboration agreements, whereas we would prefer to spend it doing licensing. But we don't have enough money to hire somebody to do the MTAs, so we have to get on with them. At University of Geneva, contract management is actually a bit unfortunate right now because it's split between different offices. So there's the Research office that does European contracts and some grant agreements. There's the legal department who does contracts between universities, and except for MTAs. And there's Unitec who does contracts with industry as well as the academic MTAs. And researchers are a little bit confused as to who they have to approach to get their contracts revised and signed. This is because there has been organic growth, and these offices grew from one person to larger offices, and the skills and expertise accidentally fell into these different offices, and as the activity expanded, we ended up keeping those contracts with each of these offices. And I think in an ideal world it would be good to reorganize the whole thing so that one office deals with all the contracts, so the researchers know where to go. So I hope that this is going to be sorted out within the next few years. But right now we're under budgetary constraints. There have been cuts, so it's not a good time to reorganize all the offices. Then our other activities are that we have a proof of concept fund. It's called InnoGap. We have put it in place 2-3 years ago. This is a fund that we use to carry out proof of concept on technologies that we want to license. It's a small fund. It's only about 30,000 Swiss francs per project. If people come to us with technology that is not developed enough so that we can license it to industry, we are able to invest 30,000 francs in developing the technology a little bit further. And this has been quite helpful. We have we have been able to invest in about 5 projects per year. We have a committee that decides which projects are funded, so it's not Unitec's decision, but we are managing the funds. And we have quite a lot of say actually in deciding who is going to be presented for this type of funding. This money comes from our royalty streams. So the royalties that come into the university from licensing are used to fund this InnoGap. So that's the institutional part. Revenue is split between inventors, their labs, and the university. So the university part goes into the InnoGap fund and is then re-injected into innovation. So it's a nice virtuous circle that we have going there, wherein innovation, the returns from innovation are used to create innovation. Then we have quite a large message to an important mission to generate awareness and promote innovation within the university. This is probably quite different from EPFL, where at EPFL there is a strong communication office that also has a mission to promote innovation, as far as I understand. Adam, correct me. At Unitec, there is no such mission at the communication office. They are totally uninterested in innovation. And therefore, we have to promote innovation within the institution and outside of it. So we spend quite a lot of time promoting innovation, actually. This is also important for our office and our activity, because when we were created, nobody knew us and nobody knew about technology transfer. And it was quite hard to convince people to come to us, bring us the inventions, and let us work with them to promote them to industry. Also, the industry didn't know us, so it's important for us to become visible for industry and for our researchers. So this whole effort linked to creating events and communication around innovation has been very useful for us to build a client base within the university, and we have tried to be as visible as possible in order to attract business also. It's not only for the good reason of generating awareness of innovation in the public, but also to advertise ourselves in a way and put ourselves on the radar so people come to us and bring us the inventions. Because we cannot go and scout. We don't have enough resources to go into the labs and ask people what they do. So we have to rely on them to come to us, which means that we have to be visible. So it's the lighthouse approach, wherein you try to be visible and hope that the people will come. And this is important when you don't have a strong institutional message that says you have to innovate. So if they don't know that they have to innovate, they have to at least see you and know that you're there. And then the last point, which is quite minor actually in our institution, is that we work with spin-off companies to help entrepreneurs get in touch with the local entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we put them in touch. That's about all we do for them. We will advise them. It depends on the people, you know, if they have strong skills in entrepreneurship or not. I mean, the technology transfer personnel. Some will be more hands-on, some will be less hands-on. But in general, we basically connect them and throw them into the entrepreneurship ecosystem. But we don't write their business plans. We don't help them plan their company in any way. With respect to our licensing activity, our office is set up in a cradle-to-grave approach. That means that one person will take the invention when it comes in, they will evaluate it, they will patent protect it, they will market it, they will negotiate the license agreement, and they will monitor the royalty streams. So it's all one person dealing with one case. Some offices split the tasks. Some offices will have people who do evaluation, some people who do marketing, some people who negotiate contracts. We don't do that. This is also due to historic reasons. When you grow from one person to 5 persons, the person who has come in first has to know how to do everything, then the second person comes in, and as the first person already does everything, then the second person will also do everything. So it spreads. So you end up with all the staff doing the same things, which is really nice for the staff. It makes the job very interesting and very varied, but I'm not sure if it's the most effective way always to do it. So if you have a lot of funding to start an office from scratch, you might consider splitting the tasks, because different skills are really...
Who's doing the triage?
So it's the licensing officers. We do the evaluation.
On what basis?
It's based on our feeling of whether we can commercialize it and the patentability. So commercial potential first, most important, and second, patentability. And then, of course, there are subsections in each of these topics.
You must have a relatively huge database on what's going on in the potential beneficiary industry.
That's the problem. We would like to have much more information on what is needed in industry. That is actually, you've put the finger exactly on a sore spot. We try to engage with industry as much as we can to bring back information on what they need. In the pharma industry, they are quite vocal as to what interests them and what doesn't. They have started printing brochures on what they're looking for. They have started to put out calls specifically on looking for people engaging in certain projects. But it's the limiting factor. So what we try to do is to evaluate what we think based on Google. We Google a lot. And then based on our initial assessment, we would decide whether we try to go forward or not. And then we try to immediately get some feedback on what we've patented to see whether anyone is interested. But you're right, it's really difficult. But we don't have any databases. So triage is indeed a difficult part. Then we work with external patent counsel to protect intellectual property. We don't have internal counsel at all. This is because we don't have enough critical mass. If we had a lot more critical mass, say in the life sciences, it would probably be more intelligent to have one person working in the office and writing the applications. Marketing is, as like for everybody, a bottleneck. It's very hard to market inventions. Our inventions are very early stage, much more so than at the EPFL probably, because this is an engineering tool, so they have at least a goal in mind when they start doing their research. For us, it's more like they research just for the sake of researching, and then they stumble across something interesting. So sometimes the applications are unknown, so it's really hard most of the time. Also, we don't have as many contacts with industry up front, so our researchers work alone or with other academics, and they have fewer interactions with industry, so they have fewer contacts in industry, and that therefore they rely on us to bring the contacts. But we are only 4 people, and 3 of us in the life sciences, so it's hard to know everybody. So this is a bit of a bottleneck. And then we negotiate contracts, write up the license agreements. We don't have a lawyer at our office at all. So we work dangerously without any safety net. If we have we have a lot of experience now. We've been around for 15 years. Most of the staff is stable, so they have acquired experience over time by doing things wrong once, so then you do them right the next time. We try to talk a lot to other offices who have lawyers or to our legal department if we have very deeply legal questions. But most of the time it's actually not the case. And then we monitor the licenses and get in the royalties and redistribute the royalties. And we're starting to find that after 15 years of activity, although we are not terribly successful in bringing in a lot of income, we have enough licenses to keep us very busy on the monitoring side. So our accountant is actually not coping terribly well, and we would actually need more workforce to start to manage all these revenue streams. They're small streams, which means that there are many payments, but small ones. So it's not very practical. Our patent budget is extremely limited. That's one of the constraints we have at Geneva. It's tiny. It's 140,000 Swiss francs per year for 3 institutions. So you don't go very far with that. We have too many licensing people for how much budget we have to patent our technologies. So that forces us to work in a deal-based model, wherein we try to, this is time 0, we evaluate technologies and we get the patent starting. So everything runs according to the patent times. It means that within the first year, before we file the PCT applications, so these are patent costs. This is the initial drafting. There's initial cost, and there is the cost of extending, of filing the international patent after 12 months, and then there is the cost of filing the national phase after 30 months from time 0, which means that by the time we get to the second peak of costs, we have to have some positive feedback from industry to make us feel comfortable about going into PCT. Sometimes we will go anyway because we have been overworked and we haven't had time to properly check industry and don't have enough feedback. In case of doubt, we would be forced probably to go a bit further. But in an ideal case, you would really want to have positive feedback before going to the next step. And here you would really want to have a license agreement in place before going into national phase, because we can't afford national phase on our own. Now, over the past years, we have started to try and go a bit further in the process, because industry gets more interested in patent applications if they feel that you have invested enough in them and you believe in them. So we have been more successful licensing patents that are in national phase than patents that are in that area in the priority year. So therefore we think it's probably necessary to actually keep them a bit longer, but we can't really afford it. So right now we are in a situation where we are running the patent budget into the wall, and we will see what happens at the end of the year. It's going to be bad, probably. Our boss is starting to be really uncomfortable because we have been spending too much on patents. But then again, our patent budget hasn't increased in 10 years, and the patent costs have quadrupled pretty much. So this is a big constraint we have in Geneva. Triage results. So in our university, we have most of our technologies in the life sciences. We have about 60–70% of the technology is in the life sciences. This is in part due to the hospitals, which provide also technology, and it's always in the life sciences for them. And even the university is also active, most active in the life sciences. We also have other types. The types of inventions we typically have are, we have medical devices, quite a bit from the hospitals. We have biomarkers and diagnostics. Biomarkers are very frequent. We have a pharmacy section that is very active, so we have lots of drug delivery. The analytical chemistry department is quite active, so they give us lots of analytical methods and apparatuses. And we have some therapeutics coming in out of the medical school. Mostly biologics. We have no small molecules, unfortunately. So it's very hard to license them, to be honest. And interestingly, we have quantum physics is extremely active in at our university. So we have a company on quantum cryptography. So it's basically teleportation. So you wouldn't expect it so active, but it's a startup company which is doing very well, and lots of patents go into that company. Quite unexpectedly. The results of the triage process are we take about half of the technologies that we receive and to work on them. And overall, we would patent about 1/3 of the technology, of the invention disclosures that we receive. Some of them are software, so that's why we work on them, but they're not patented, or materials. And then we would typically license to pre-existing companies, and very few technologies are licensed to startups. This trend has actually started to change a little bit over the past years, and I find that we have more and more startup licenses actually than pre-existing company licenses. There's a shift, which is probably linked to the fact that companies have been restructuring and they are more reluctant in the life sciences, they have been more reluctant to license from universities. surprisingly, because they communicate that they want to work with universities, but we found it harder to license to them over the past years. So therefore, startups are needed in many more cases. If we receive royalty revenue, we would typically split it between the inventors, the laboratory. So this is private money. They can use it in any way they want. Laboratory, that's for their research, and the university. And that part goes into InnoGap, as I mentioned before. And the split is under 50,000 francs, it's half for the inventors and a quarter for the lab and a quarter for the institution. And above 50,000, it's equally split over the three. We are a deficitary, basically we're not making money, we're quite far from break even. So we cost money, we don't bring in money. But as the activity is important for the local economy and for the university needs to be seen to innovate, they nevertheless support us and hopefully will continue to support us even if we don't make money. It's not unusual, most universities don't make money. Some numbers from 2013, we had about 40 inventions. This was an all-time low in the past years. We usually have about 45, 50. We filed 17 new patent applications out of those 40 inventions. Our patent portfolio has increased now to 487 patents and patent applications. This is also the reason why our patent budget needs to increase, because our patent expenditures have increased because we accumulate patents over time. We had 16 new licenses. Unfortunately, there is no direct correlation between this number and that one. It's not that we had 17 new patents and we immediately licensed them. It's just by chance that the numbers are close. These are usually technologies from the past years that get licensed during that year. And we had 3 spin-offs. This is the normal number. We always have about 2, 3, 4 spin-offs maximum per year. This number is much lower than at the PFL. What else can I tell you about that? Yeah, so the numbers here for research contracts are pathetic compared to the EPFL. We have about 50 to 100 contracts and for a total value of 5 to 10 million Swiss francs. So it's very low. Compared to other institutions in Switzerland, it's very, very low. This is also has historical reasons. It's because until a few years ago, researchers didn't have to sign contracts through the rectorate. So there are still some people out there who don't know that their contracts have to be signed by the institution. So we don't see the contracts. It's also basic research, and people don't engage very much with industry at that stage. There is no active effort to promote going out towards industry and proactively recruiting collaborations. We hope to increase that number, but it's a slow process without a message from the rectorate. If you look at the number of licenses or performance in licensing technology, we're actually doing quite well. If you look at Stanford as a comparison, so Stanford on the left, University of Geneva on the right. At Stanford, they have had technology transfer for 40 years. And out of the 6,500 invention disclosures that licensed 2,700, that's a 41% rate. If you look at the 10 years of Geneva, we've had much fewer inventions and fewer licenses. However, the ratio is actually better than Stanford. But that's just the number of licenses, and you can massage the numbers. If you look at actual revenue from those licenses, we're not doing that well. We shouldn't do that comparison. So this slide was made by my boss, and he carefully avoided making the slide about royalty revenues. Our experience with licensing technology has been that we have decent chances to license something that would be a product close to market, such as an object to water plants or the vegetalized wall. That's really easy. We've had fair success with the medical devices. They work pretty well. Any technology platforms, if they're robust, it's possible to find licensees. We have lots of reagents licenses. That's really easy. And it's actually a nice little revenue stream. The problem with that is that it's many different deals, so you have to negotiate the deals and you have to monitor the royalties, so it's small steps. But they add up to quite a bit of money, actually. So our main revenue is actually from reagents, embarrassingly. But you have to work hard for them. And we have been able to license therapeutics, but only to startups lately. So if there is an inventor who wants to pursue his invention in a therapeutics field, then yes, by all means, they will probably be able to kick something off if the technology is any good. What's been hard to license or impossible were therapeutic targets. You can't do anything with those, pretty much. Therapeutic use patents. They're very difficult because pharma companies want to have composition of matter patents, and they are not interested in use patents. So these have been hard. Any screening methods, because it's hard to monitor. So again, people are not interested in them at all. And anything that comes in with a label polyvalent. We found, I mean, it sounds good in principle. You want to have polyvalent technology, but the problem with that is that you don't know what the killer application will be. So it's very hard to market those unless the researcher is very proactive about finding the real application for them. So it sounds like a good thing, but it's actually a really bad thing most of the time. Despite our pathetic numbers of 2 to 3 startups per year, I'm almost done, 2 to 3 startups per year, we have actually, so somebody has actually sat down and tried to figure out what the number of jobs created and money invested in the region. And it actually amounts to quite a lot of jobs created and money invested in the region. So even if you only have 2 to 3 startups per year, after a number of years, you start to have impact in the region. And I think that's a really important point. And our institution hasn't really communicated very strongly on that point because it's not the strong point of Geneva University. I mean, with 3 startups, you would rather below the average of number of startups created. But even with that number under average, you still create a lot of impact. So it's an important activity for the region, and you can really communicate well on that part, I think. We have also incubators, maybe something I should mention. There are 2 incubators in the Geneva area for startups. There's one in the life sciences, it's called Eclosion, and another one, which is for the other sciences, technologies, it's called Fugit. And those are very active, and they have been taking a lot of credit for startup creation in the region. Interestingly, much less than half of those technologies have, I mean, no, not half, much less, have gone to the incubators. So most of these have started without the incubators. But nevertheless, it's important to have them around, and it's important to have a not mutually exclusive relationship. So they are free to take companies from elsewhere, and we are free to go elsewhere. But having them in the region has actually helped nucleate the whole process and increase entrepreneurship and startup creation in the area. And the last thing I want to mention are a few of the events that we have been organizing to generate awareness of technology transfer in our institution and outside. So one very important project has been the Entrepreneurship Week at Geneva. So we have never received a message from the Rectorate that we actually should engage in this Entrepreneurship Week. This is something, it's a worldwide event. It always happens in November, and many institutions engage in it, and they try to create entrepreneurship spirit in the students. So our boss decided a few years ago that he wanted to do this. The first edition almost killed us because it was extra time without extra resources. The second edition was even worse for us. The third one started to be rolling, so it's going well. So finally the Rectorate has seen the wisdom in participating, and they have now taken over the event, and it's the communication office that is going to deal with it, and we're very relieved. We think it's a worthwhile contribution to creating the right spirit in the region, which is why we took it on, but it's something that it's really hard to take on something that represents a lot of work without getting the resources to go with it. Then what we have on a regular basis is the course. It's a 5-module course wherein we tell researchers a bit about various topics related to technology transfer. So it's typically 5 topics, and it's one on entrepreneurship, another one on collaboration agreements, another one on licensing technology, another one on intellectual property, and the last one is about innovation in general. And that works really well, and the room is usually full, and it's a good way for us to generate a little bit of marketing for our office and for innovation in general. It's every 2 years because we can't fill the rooms every year. Then we have networking events. That's the Lake Geneva Innovation Society that 2 researchers created quite a few years ago. So they wanted to bring together industry with researchers. So we stage these gala dinners wherein we invite industry people and professors, and we seat them at tables and mix them by topic and try and engineer discussions that might then end up with fruitful interaction in the future. And then at dessert they change places so they can interact with as many people as possible. So that works really well, and people really enjoy going there. Then we have some training that's open to all. It's just a half a day on intellectual property, but people from outside the university can also participate. They usually tend not to, though. And then we have a partnering event, that's Bio-Innovation Day, that was also created by a professor, two professors actually, and it was created in the early days by Unitec and has been now taken over in the whole between EPFL and Uni Lausanne. It's a partnering event wherein people come and pitch their technology. They have 3-minute pitches, they present their projects, and we try to fill the room with industry people. So it's direct licensing. Basically, we hope to have a direct match between people sitting in the audience who are interested in the project, and will try and engage with the researchers. And that has worked really well with respect to startups, actually. Many projects that have been presented here ended up being successful startups from one edition to the next. So that works really well. Also a lot of work to organize, but at least it's really in our core mission. So we feel quite good about organizing this one. And that's about it. If you have any questions. I think I've given you a bit of an overview of everything we do. So if there are any topics that you're interested in, I don't know if you have still 5 minutes for a question or something.
We do have a lot of time for questions.
And you can ask them in Romania if you want, if you prefer.
I'm more interested in the therapeutics.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing biological, so it's monoclonals or interferon,
Peptides, proteins, yeah.
And in what stage are these startups right now? I mean, are they in animal testing or?
Actually, biologics are the only ones that we are sometimes able to license to industry. Our most advanced project right now is a phase 2 project of a biologic that was licensed to Biogen. There is no difference really between small molecules and biologics with respect to licensing to startups.
Actually, the startup-driven, the Geneva startup just raised funding to bring to take it to phase 1 and phase 2A.
Yeah, I mean, normally that's what would happen. Yeah, they would never take it beyond phase 2A. Now, in recent years, I think that there's a shift right now, and people are starting to realize that there's more, that the deals are better at earlier stage. So many companies now aim to license in stage 1 already. But typically, our companies are not that far. I mean, most of our startups that have started based on biologics would be somewhere in preclinical going into humans soon. Soon, at the stage where they will soon be going into humans, and that lasts for years then. Yeah. There's a lot of discovery still going on. They're very early stage. So many start much too early. They should really be staying much longer in the lab.
Okay, no, because you can do animal testing while in the lab.
Exactly. Yes.
Partners,
I think many of the startups in the life sciences should really be staying longer in the labs. I don't know why exactly they feel that they have to move out quite so fast. It might be because of patent costs.
Yeah, probably, and also, there's no reasons for it.
Yeah. Nothing else?
Okay. Thank you.
It's really reassuring that, I mean, starting with EPFL, we were a little bit overwhelmed. I mean,
They are very good at communication. They don't tell you the truth.
And they're probably more self-confident. But anyway, when you see with the innovation hub in Switzerland, practically EPFL is an innovation hub, and probably you collaborating with EPFL, I think there is. I hope there is.
We have some projects.
Startup,
Joint inventions.
I know brands here probably coming.
Certainly, they are 60 kilometers away.
Yeah, but those 60 kilometers are quite far.
No, because it's closer to what
Yes.
we...
The EPFL has had, I mean, I'm talking about my perception from Geneva. This might be all wrong, so please correct me. But I saw a study from 1999 or so. When I first started in technology transfer, I was reading up on comparisons between universities in Switzerland. There was this CEST study. And there, they had this map of Switzerland, wherein University of Geneva had a high peak in publications and a high peak in citation. And University of Lausanne was a bit lower, and Basel was quite high, and Zurich was very high, and EPFL was nowhere on the scene. It was not on the map back then. And then there was a huge effort to actually boost innovation, boost the research. They aggressively hired professors away from Geneva to put them into the... It was a whole concert, I mean, a strategic effort with somebody who was actually thinking about how to do, what to do to become great. And it worked. That was about 15 years ago. I would say the whole development was in the last... While I was already in technology transfer in Geneva. It started a bit earlier.
Say partially, right?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead now, correct me.
We started in the early 90s, so at that time we were at the PFL, the first technology transfer office in Switzerland. But there was, at that time, much less of that culture of innovation and tech transfer. There are a lot of culture in collaborating with the industry. A lot of you are less implementing and we... Yeah.
I mean, research-wise, there has been a huge expansion at EPFL. It increased its quality of research tremendously. So that helps for innovation.
It goes together. If you increase research...
It doesn't. If it's part of a strategy, then it works. This was all part of a strategy, and they boosted the research and they boosted the innovation at the same time, because University of Geneva was very good at research, and it has become a little bit less good, still very good, but has declined a little bit, but it has not made a huge effort in innovation except what we could carry on with our resources.
Because I have a question for Andre. For example, Andre moved to Geneva. What would you change there? Is it like in Geneva?
Nothing. They are just doing great.
Our tech transfer office is doing it's a philosophy thing. You know, it's a philosophical thing. University of Geneva is a polyvalent institution, which means you don't want to communicate that you have any particular strengths. It's taken them a long time to even be allowed to mention that some departments are a bit stronger than others. So we had a strategic plan that was put up about 5-6 years ago, wherein the rectorate finally admitted that we have 5 axes of most important research that we wanted to concentrate on and to boost actively. It's something that was not politically correct before. So it's hard to sell an institution if you are not allowed to communicate on its strengths. So it has been a very strong political will in Geneva to keep this polyvalent, open to all different topics, not focusing on particular ones. And there's also been a very strong intention to keep the research basic, because it's important to have blue sky research. So if you start to focus on applications, you lose that blue sky research. So it's an actual intention to not push people into innovation too hard. Well, it is an engineering school, don't forget, so it's not really blue sky, blue sky. They have an idea of what they want to do when they start. But yeah, I agree, it worked. I mean, it sounds like it worked nicely at EPFL. I don't know what's inside, but from the outside it looks good.
You mentioned this ranking or evaluation of these public research institutions. What is the entity that does this kind of thing in Switzerland, or is it a permanent thing, or is it just once in a while the government says, "Oh, let's do this"? So I
think the one that I saw was done by the government 15 years ago, and I haven't seen another one since then. I don't know, Andre, have they done any other evaluations? Yes. I mean, I guess they generate huge fights between the institutions, so it's not very constructive.
The criteria.
And then internationally they do them.
A number of them, so
yeah, it's not very relevant. I mean, EPFL just came out.
And for policymakers, of course.
Yeah.
Who handles this? Because the reason I ask is that there's a Romanian startup of a friend of mine who is developing these data mining algorithms for scientific citations and publications, and trying to extract information and visibility and activity information from all this huge databases of publications in order to give feedback, and their clients are supposedly universities, they want to improve, and they want to get information about what are the best departments, who is doing what, including innovation stuff.
Yeah.
So he was asking me who is doing this kind of evaluation things. Does each university have its own kind of assessment processes, or there's a federal
Probably.
assessment or cantonal assessment or something?
Well, there is a
Don't know.
manual reporting process that where we have to
Yeah.
communicate the number of inventions, patents, licenses, etc. And
The
that
innovation-
information that is
I think the
provided.
research.
Also have to report?
Yeah.
The labs, the labs
For
import
publication.
internally.
it-
The
it-
labs report internally.
Yeah.
And then the institution reports to the mother, to the umbrella institution, which is the RAD. So it's,
Yeah, for you.
For us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where we
from,
report.
University of Geneva. I don't know if the universities in
There's a cruise, but
Switzerland.
I don't know exactly
There's
who
an
when.
association of the universities.
Yeah, there's a cruise.
Yeah, so they certainly have all that data, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean there's certainly
Association of
reporting,
universities,
Yeah.
okay.
but it's interestingly the reporting is different and done by different entities for innovation and for research. So in our institution, research and innovation are separate. So it's different dicaster.
Yeah, that's-
It's the first time that it ever happened for us. We've never had separation between research and innovation because it's quite closely linked.
How do you receive finance from your government?
We don't. I mean, the universities receive funding.
But the University of Geneva is a public university.
Yes, yes, and the university receives funding from the government. Yes, and it's probably based on number of students and.
What are the factors that influence your budget? How
Do you know?
does the government establish annually?
I think it's based on the number of students,
Yeah.
mostly.
What?
Number of students, mostly.
Number of students.
It doesn't matter how many scientific publications or projects.
Don't think
different
so.
projects.
There is a government funding for the teaching aspect for the general budget of the university, and then there is more government funding that goes directly to the labs. That's the Fonds National. So they directly apply for funding for government funding for their research, and that's based on publications and quality of research. We have good scores in Geneva on that.
Yes, I've been hearing about physical interactions between industry and research, Gala dinners and events like that, when you really put researchers with industry together and then see what happens.
Hmm.
Do they really actually, what is the outcome of these interactions, of these?
There are a number of outcomes. So in one very happy case, we managed to sit next to each other, somebody who was looking for funding with somebody who actually had funding. So the result was 4 million funding, direct result of that gala dinner. So it was a good investment, this gala dinner. In other cases, it's mostly you expand the horizons. Basically, you open up a new activity for the researchers. They're more open to it afterwards.
If you knew the profile of the need of the industry, I don't know, for example, by the way, I was curious about this challenge list published by companies, pharma companies. Okay, you see the mission, you see the pipeline, you see things, but do you have any insight about other challenges that they have and they would like
No,
to?
so typically, I mean, the way you organize these, you can't, they're not quite as directed as that. Basically, you have a topic,
Okay.
and then you just get in the room as many people that you know who are roughly in that topic, and then you try and match the professors so that they fit nicely together. It's hard to really focus on one. You have to be a bit broader because otherwise you favor one topic above the other, so then you get into political
And if
issues.
that guy is in a certain stage and he wants funding, and then you bring somebody from
Yeah,
industry.
then you try to
Yeah, give them dreams.
see what happens and turn off the lights.
What faculties do you have inside the University of Geneva?
All of them. Name it, we have it. So the faculties are medical school, sciences, sciences économiques, sciences sociales, I don't know, law, psychology, I think is a separate one, humanities, yeah, lettres, Yeah, that's about it.
Engineering?
No engineering. There's EPFL. They can go to EPFL. 60 kilometers.
Do you have,
That's the problem.
what are your competitors on the education market?
Competitors, the world. There's the MOOCs now. So I mean, in Geneva, people are quite local actually in Geneva. So if they grew up in Geneva, they go to Geneva University, you know, it's, or to EPFL if they want to. It's all the universities compete with each other basically, from an education point of view. So it's hard to say who are direct competitors. I mean, University of Lausanne could be because of the geography. Beyond that, it's the world.
There are a lot of researchers who said that there are 600 teachers and around 2,000
Professors, we've got more teachers.
Okay. And around 2,500 researchers. How do you get funds for salaries? And,
So-
how permanent are these researchers? So they change.
So the professors are permanent. And then the researchers are PhD students and postdocs, pretty much, and some technicians. But they're not part of that number.
When there is a professor coming to Geneva, does he have a basic amount of resources that?
Yeah, so there's always an installation grant, so he gets some money to set up his lab, and then he gets a number of salaries that is negotiated based on his reputation and how badly they want him. And then the researcher will apply to other grant agencies, so will apply to the Fonds National, for example, in Bern, to get money from the government to do his research. So that's money that he will be using to hire other postdocs and expand. So our research budget is 300 million Swiss francs per year, which is nice, but it's probably much lower than the EPFL, no?
Just twice.
So it's the responsibility of the professor to bring more money for
Yes.
his lab.
Yes, and some are good and some are bad at it.
Yeah, usually, for example, in EPFL, we do have, I think, David Atienza yesterday described a little bit the lab. They have, when he came, maybe 2 or 3 positions with this installation package, and they may be 17 now.
Exactly, and then you get 10 more with your grants. Yeah.
So this comes from external funding, of course.
And it's performance based.
How much from this fund is national and how much is European funding?
So these 300 million, I think, do not take into account any external funding. That's just from the university, as far as I'm aware.
National funds.
And then on top of that, the University of Geneva has about another 100 million from the Fonds National, which is national funds. And then they have another, I don't know, 100 million from European grants. So I think the university's money is actually still a majority, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure.
So the university is putting the money for research?
Yeah, they have some money for research, some salaries and some equipment.
And the professors, it's salaries.
Yeah, professor salaries
Salaries
typically.
and research money. Teaching.
But at University of Geneva, for example, they don't bring in a lot of external. I mean, there's another 100 million, no, what was it, 10 million maximum per year that comes in as far on our radar. Maybe there's more, but we only see about 10 million extra in industry funding. That's very little. The advantage is that, you know, they have free publication, no constraints, they do whatever they like, they can be creative with their topics, blue sky. Works well.
Okay.
So?